Welcome, everyone. I'd like to call to order this meeting, the September 9th, 2019 meeting of the Clearwater Downtown Development Board. Let's begin by introducing ourselves, beginning on my left.
Ray Casano.
Lena Teixeira.
Stu Shower.
Paris Morphopoulos.
Caitlin Jammo.
And David Albritton, ex officio.
Thank you very much. Do we have any citizens who'd like to address us? There appears not to be. We'll go on to new business. Item 3.1, the final public millage hearing, Resolution 02-19, in accordance with, basically, I don't need to read this again. We're not on the air right now, are we?
Yes.
We are?
Yeah, it is.
Oh. Okay. Well, in accordance with Chapter 200 of the Florida Statutes, which defines requirements for the determination of millage and the rules governing truth in millage compliance, the DDB must hold 2 public hearings to adopt the final millage rate for the new fiscal year. The adoption of this resolution to establish the millage rate and the related budget resolution are an integral part of fulfilling these requirements. The DDB set a tentative millage rate of 0.9700 mil on July 10, 2019, which is the rate that appeared on the trim bill notices mailed to taxpayers in August. Resolution 02-19 is presented in order to adopt the millage rate of 0.9700 mils to support the operating budget for the 2019-2020 fiscal year. Member Teixeira, would you read the resolution for us, 02-19?
Resolution of the Clearwater Downtown Development Board of the City of Clearwater, Florida, declaring the millage rate to be levied for the fiscal year beginning October 1st, 2019, and ending September 30th, 2020, for operating purposes, providing an effective date of this resolution.
Thank you very much. There are no citizens present, so we will just move looking for a motion to adopt on second and final reading.
So moved. So moved.
I second it.
And a second, okay. Is there any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? It's unanimous. Okay, I'm going to call on you next. If you can find it. 3.2, final public budget hearing, Resolution 03-19. As previously stated, the DDB must adhere to the Florida statutes and the rules governing trim compliance. On June 5th, 2019, the DDB approved a preliminary budget that outlined proposed estimates of revenues and expenditures for the 2019-2020 fiscal year. The budget was also approved at the August 7th, 2019 DDB meeting. Member Jammo, will you please read Budget Resolution 03-19?
Resolution of the Clearwater Downtown Development Board of the City of Clearwater, Florida, declaring the final budget to be adopted for the fiscal year beginning October 1st, 2019 and ending September 30th, 2020 for operating purposes, providing an effective date of this resolution.
Very good. There being no citizens present, I'm looking for a motion to adopt on second and final reading.
So moved.
Second.
Very good. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? There being none, it's unanimous. Okay, let's move on to item 3.3, discussion on the downtown parking study.
Okay, so per your request, wanted to give you guys an update on, just kind of go through the study to help you understand a little bit more about it and to answer. We look at doing a parking study, specifically the CRA. And that was because at the time we knew that the engineering department wasn't going to study downtown parking anytime soon, wasn't on their work plan. So I heard from several stakeholders downtown that they were interested in learning more about parking. and what the current situation was, what future plans were. As I was preparing chapter 4 of the downtown plan, I kept finding in all these older plans that we were going to build some kind of parking structure downtown. I was like, what is this about? What is this for? And you know, no one had really looked at that since 2012. We had a study in 2009, then 2012. So the questions that we were seeking to answer with this were, what happens when Imagine Clearwater is constructed, right, and those surface parking lots go away? Does downtown need more public parking, right? Remember, we control public parking. We don't control privately owned parking lots and garages. If the city is going to build parking, where should it go and how many spaces are needed? And then how could the city accommodate an increased number of technology employees, which they calculate at 7 people per square foot versus 3, right? Because they use smaller workspaces. They don't have big, you know, executive vice president offices or anything like that. And then what are public options for supporting restaurant and retail uses? So that was the questions that we were seeking to answer. Again, what we found, peak demand right now, or this is August of last year, at this point a year ago, is weekday afternoon. On evenings and weekends, we have a surplus of 2,800 public parking spaces. Based on current trends, we need around 500 more parking spaces within the next 10 years. Once you get over 5,000 attendees to event, we need a transportation management plan. We cannot accommodate that parking in downtown. And that we have a lot of updates to do on our parking technology. We need to keep public parking within 2 blocks of Cleveland Street open to the public, and consider building new parking at one of the 3 sites identified in the study. So question 1, the report, if you look at, you have it there on page 18 when it talks about future parking demand, and in the summary, it talks about there's 7 or 6 city facilities that will displace 707 spaces. So this graph here shows what those are. So the blue or purple hatched area and the yellow circle at the top, that's kind of phase 1 of displacement, right? So that's the Harbor View lot and portions around the library and certain parts of the boat slip parking lot down there, and the lower lot below City Hall, and then the darker plum color right, is looking at portions of the CMA lot and other parts of the boat slip. So those are the 6 facilities that are going to totally go away or be reduced by 707 spaces. So when we were looking at this future parking demand and how to meet it and event management, we're looking at those areas going away. Is that?
Can I just ask a question? Is
Yeah.
it appropriate?
Yeah, this is for back and forth as much as you want.
Okay, so, correct me if I'm wrong, I might be. Phase 1 and phase 2, am I to understand that that actually has combined, the 2 phases have merged in the development stage of Imagine Clearwater, as opposed to phase 1 first and phase 2 following?
Honestly, that's going to be a really difficult question to answer until we have a construction manager on board, because there might be portions that would go away and portions that would stay, right? So if you look at right now, the library parking lot and the Harbor View parking, the one adjacent to Osceola, that might not be touched for 4 years, right? Even though that's included in phase 1. So when we were looking at this, right, last year, that was like, okay, we think this is how construction's gonna go. Well, now we're consolidating phases. When a construction manager comes on, there might be more consolidation, there might be more parsing out, right? It's just gonna be difficult to answer.
Amanda,
Yes.
the need for 500 new spaces over the next 10 years is in addition to the loss of the 707.
It incorporates the loss of those.
Well, you didn't-
Yes, so it accounts for these going away. And I have a slide about that tells how demand is
Why
calculated.
does that math make any sense? If we're losing 700 spots and the downtown's growing, why do we need fewer spots in the future?
Because that doesn't calculate, this doesn't show what the demand is today. The peak demand today,
Is less than this number?
correct.
Okay,
Demand
okay.
is half.
That's
Half the
exactly
space.
right.
Big demand, half of the space is still empty, as far as I understood.
Yes,
Yeah.
that's correct.
So,
Okay. that makes
Which you
more
can-
sense.
Yeah.
Which you can fill by the end of the year.
So if we put in 500 new spaces, we'd be in the same position we
Same
are.
ballpark.
No, we wouldn't feel any
Right.
tighter parking wise.
Do you feel tights too, as a growing
No,
company?
well, listen, we are actually considering building our own tower with 900 extra spaces or 700. So we're taking care of our own space. We don't need public parking.
That's smart.
You got it.
I need to put a parking garage under my store.
Thanks
It's
very
a
much,
minors.
Amanda. What else have you got for us?
Okay, so second question here. Let me switch to this. Are lots 9 and 110 available to the public? Are they counted in the parking study? So let's go to the.
In the future, it would be nice if we could see this on our screens or on that screen over there. Those last 3 months, right?
We'll make it cross the line.
So this
Ask
is.
your IT guys, okay? Okay, don't go there.
That's another conversation about moving our meetings to the daytime, so we can have IT guys on hand. All right, so on this, you see number 110 is the Nolan, and then number 9 is the Pierce 100 condos. So these are private lots. They are not available to the public on a regular basis. They were included in the occupancy count studies, and we chose to include private lots to get an understanding if there was an opportunity for shared parking with residential developments, right? Because usually they're a perfect candidate. When residents are gone all day, you can park office users, right? And then office users leave, residents come back at night. So part of the reason that we counted this was to get a sense of how those units were being used, or if they're seasonal, in the case of condos, is there sharing opportunities during different months and such. They are included in this special events section because the consultant wanted to point out, while we were looking at public parking, right, based on the counts, the parking consultant said, look, some private properties make money by providing parking during events, right? And the city doesn't manage that or control that, but if the Nolan said, hey, residents, get out of here, we want to charge, $25 to park all day and run a shuttle, they could do that right now. And what that feeds into is if we say, during a special event, we need 900 parking spaces, it's not a good decision financially for the city to build a 900 space parking garage that's only used 15 times a year, right? Or 50 times a year. That's not a good financial investment from a public standpoint.
Especially knowing that a parking space in a structure costs $20,000 a piece.
That's right, which brings us to our next point. The cost of building a parking space.
Ta-da! Sorry, I jumped ahead, I didn't know it.
Thank you, Stuart.
It's 20.
18 to 25, depending on.
Depending.
Right, so if on page 29 and 30 of the report, you have several examples here of different parking projects. Several examples of different parking garages that have been built over the past 10 years in different cities, some that are just kind of standard, some that have commercial space on the bottom, some that are totally wrapped in artwork. And you're looking at a range between $18,000 to $25,000 to build structured parking, right? So not a surface parking lot. And what goes into that? Obviously the cost of the land, how high is the structure, are there other elements to the parking garage? Is it just standard precast concrete? Or do you want to, are you doing something attractive to it? Is there commercial space on the ground floor?
Yeah,
You are.
that's a lot of tens of millions of dollars.
Yes, parking is very, very, very expensive. So you really want to take building it very seriously. So then there was a question about how was the vacant restaurant space identified, and I handed out to you, this inventory was conducted in October of 2018 by Anne Fogarty France. And so I believe from going through this that what she did was she calculated the vacant space that was already designed for restaurant use, right? So not any commercial space, but if there had been a restaurant in there previously and it was vacant now, that's where she got to the 12,850 number. However, I did not have time to add it all up individually. That's just glancing through, doing rough math.
So that space only reflects what is designed now and not any of the empty spaces that are just empty shells, that may very well be restaurants.
Sure, which brings to 2 points. Even if every single space on Cleveland Street converted to a restaurant use, our current zoning code does not require them to build parking. That being said, the city is also not required to provide parking for every commercial use. It relies on the private market to determine the amount of parking that they need. Right, so if a restaurateur comes in and they say, I want to convert this empty box into a restaurant, it's up to them to determine how much parking they need and if that site will work for them or not and their parking needs, right? And some restaurants and concepts are going to say, we don't need a lot of parking, you know, I'm fine with that public garage there, or people Uber to us because we do wine pairings and they can't drink and drive. No one drives to and from our restaurant, it's our model, right? Whatever it may be. So the city will provide some parking, but the city has not said we will provide all parking required for every commercial use that could come into the city. It said private property owner, you can decide how much parking you think you need based on here's our current supply, here's what we have, and it's up to
And
you.
I think that's one reason why our downtown hasn't developed.
And that might be the
Ask
case.
me, for 15, 20 years, we've been talking about more parking. 500 block has none. After hours, they haven't, but if a restaurateur, and I've had them in here, look at the 500 and they go, I'm not coming down unless I can park my people at least inside of my building, not maybe out in front. So how, I mean, you just gonna tell them, well, maybe you're not for here, maybe you should go to Largo?
Right, and I know we have had this conversation, and different restaurants have different models, right? If it's a lot of larger chain restaurants, say your Carrabba's, right, or certain steakhouses, right, they rely on having big surface parking lots adjacent to their front door. And
It doesn't have to be adjacent, but it has to be, I've talked to people that have money that want to come into our downtown. We have a beautiful downtown, but until we get something situated where they can know that they can park their clients, they're not going to come, and they're waiting for us to do something.
That brings up an interesting point. If the reality is that the city's not obligated to provide parking, and the people can put in restaurants whether they intelligently design it for or anticipate what parking they're going to need, does the city have a position at this point on what level of parking they want to provide or are willing to provide? Is there such a number or percentage or position at all?
Well, I can tell you this, we've put $10 million aside for parking garage.
For downtown?
Paid out of, we did have it paid by a penny for Pinellas, we moved it out a penny for Pinellas. Just last meeting, we talked about it. It's in reserve in the parking fund for that. And I know this is, I'm gonna be talking a little bit here because there's nobody here anyway. Because I'm on PSTA and on the planning committee, I'm pushing very hard to get PSTA bus station moved over to our site that we've been talking about for 15 years, since Greenlight. They've already started the design of it at Myrtle and Court Street. It'll be an intermodal center, that's where we want them to go. The city's gonna it's gonna be a partner in that. They're gonna have retail restaurants, maybe structured parking, big intermodal center. So trying to line that up where they can move out of where they are in that block at Park and Garden and Pierce and Fort Harrison is, at least for me, now I'm only 1 out of 5, but I mean, that's always been my first place, place for a parking garage.
Which block is that now again?
Where the
Park and Garden,
PSTA
Right across from the
terminal
pink
is
church.
right now.
PSTA and the county lot
And the
right
county
there.
lot.
Okay, that lot.
It's centralized, it's a perfect walk
Everything.
to Coachman Commons. It's a good walk to downtown, I mean, you're a block away from downtown. It's almost like Baywalk in St. Pete. Remember when they did that?
Yeah.
They had a
It's a
parking
block.
garage, you come out, and boom, you're right there. And I just thought that would be a good central location. Now, we haven't talked about it. Some council members, I think it ought to be over by the MSB, which is a longer walk. But,
Yeah.
I mean, I've been sitting in your seat for a long time thinking about this, and so I'm really gonna be pushing this. I've already got PSTA moving on it, and, you know, as far as I'm concerned, I got 4.5 years to get a city hall built. It'll be on top of that parking garage, if I have a say-so.
And where does the county stand on whether they want to be?
I think you know, I'm not the person that does that, but the county has been talked about that we're interested in that lot, so.
Mhm. But they haven't stated a position or any interest themselves?
I don't know, I'd have to ask the city manager. I mean, he's known a while, and I know they've talked, city has talked about with the county, and I've talked to the county, you know, commissioners about it, so. But nothing is decided yet until council actually talks about it, which I'm trying to get that pushed forward. My excuse is 4.5 years we got to build a city hall. And we need to be doing it, stuff right now for it. I'm not gonna wait 2 years down the road and start thinking about it. I mean, we've lost 6 months. We've been out of city hall 6 months. We've been in the, you know where we are now. We got a 5-year contract, 4.5 years left on it. I don't wanna have to extend it. I wanna be somewhere in that 5 years.
I have a question. The $10 million that have been set aside, at 20,000 a spot, that
It's 500.
conveniently comes up with 500 spots, the
Yeah.
amount that the study says we need. But if a parking building was built there, how many spots would be needed for the office uses that would be going above it? Does anybody know? Like for the city and the county?
I don't know. We haven't come into any kind of exactly how many spots we need. It could be a public-private partnership that would do that, because we're talking about retail wrap on the bottom, parking on there's unlimited height there. You go up unlimited height. So we're not.
So it'd be much more than 500 spots than if it was going
Could
to
be.
provide
I mean,
500
but, you know, that's
plus.
something that council needs to talk about, but I'm kind of pushing at least that location and getting PSTA moved and all the other mechanics I can't do. That has to be done by city and the county.
Mhm.
There is an alternative that I've been kind of looking at for, gosh, I don't know how long. Just extend the existing parking garage on across the street where you guys are, Garden Street. The guy who owns the Bank of America building, there's a surface parking lot. Take that, take the stuff that sits on the north side of the garden parking garage, which is just also private property. Buy that and just expand that, go up, which I think is a little better for the 500 block because it is right on their backside, if you will.
On the 500 block.
It's
Well,
on the
so is-
500
so is
Who's the
block.
other one?
So
You
is
park,
parking
It's equally
garden.
the same
It's on the
distance.
back. It's on the flip side of that.
yeah, you park and you walk around the block and you're right on the 500 block. So restaurateurs, they would love that. It's also good for the 3 office towers because they can start putting people in there. The Bank of America building has a problem because it doesn't have any covered parking. So if you build a parking garage right across the street, plus on the north side, Daniels should be happy with that. It could be an alternative. I've been looking out on this empty space there with a tiny little parking garage there with lots of space on both left and side of it, and you go up there too. So those are the 2 spots that make sense.
I do feel that having a bus station there is not an appropriate utilization of that land.
No, it should move.
Right.
HDA should move.
The other thing I was interested in knowing is, has anyone looked at the return? I know that's $18,000 per spot, but what is the return on investment when you increase the tax base of having vibrant downtown with all the extra people working there and spending their dollars there? We can't dismiss that. It's not just a one-way thing where, oh, it's at $18,000 a spot. We are getting a return for that, I think.
Of course.
You have a point.
Hard to quantify.
Plus the benefit of the new bus station, pushing the homeless feeding a little further away from downtown.
Well, the CRA.
Not anti-homeless, but downtown would be better if they're away.
The CRA increment for the city portion, for the entire CRA, all of it, is roughly 1.5 million, right? So if you're looking at, a parking garage that costs 5 million, and that doesn't include sales tax, right, or what the sales tax benefit would be, but for what the city would see back from it, it would have to be a pretty significant, they'd have to generate a good amount of money, right, in order to see any kind of return on that in less than 20 years.
You can get some good monthlies because I sold the city 2 decks in Station Square at about $10,000 a spot, and that is completely full now. So I know they're monthly of that.
Right, but most of that's city employees.
Oh, is it?
Yeah.
So they don't pay, huh?
No. Which isn't, but that's not, rarely are cities gonna make money off of parking, right? That's not even an expectation. That's great if that can happen, but you do it for larger economic development goals, but it has to be designed in a way that's gonna meet those goals. So I think Councilmember Albritton, to your point, we are planning on building public parking, but it's still gonna be an ongoing conversation. If someone says, my dream spot for a restaurant is this one right here, and there's not what they consider ideal parking, right, that's gonna always be a conversation. So whether we're doing valet or pedicabs or better signage or within, we're always gonna have to continue to look at finding the right match of the right space plus the right parking.
In Dunedin, they walk 2 or 3 blocks, get to all those nice
There's
restaurants.
several parking spots.
Right, but you
Several.
still, when it's busy,
You
still-
just choose which one. If I want to go to Pisces, it's the corner. If I want to go to Tex-Mex, they have one across the street.
Not when it's busy.
I go there when it's busy, and
I
I
always
always
just
find
count on
parking.
somebody leaving as I arrive.
What?
I always just count on somebody leaving from directly in front of the restaurant as I arrive.
Lucky
Works like a
you.
charm.
Yes. Hey, I have
You
a
walk,
hard-
you live longer.
I have a hard stop at 6, so we have a few minutes left.
Okay. Go ahead.
For me, at least, there's no particular,
There's no motion or
votes, there's
action.
no
Yeah.
motions, et cetera, okay.
Did you have more, Amanda?
This was the last question. Basically, how did we calculate this future parking demand? So there were a couple factors here, and I'm sorry, I was looking for the remotes. I don't know why these TVs don't automatically turn on, but I will fix it. So,
Somebody woke up, look.
The one that has no one in front of it is working.
Suddenly something comes alive, it's alive!
Anyway, let's go on so we can get done.
so the projected peak demand in the year 2028, so what we think the total demand for public parking will be is 995 vehicles, right? And our peak demand time is that 12 to 2 p.m., right? So this is what we think we'll need to provide in 2028. And the assumptions for how we calculate how much parking a different use needs, they used Urban Land Institute's shared parking standards. And engineers use these studies, so basically they go out to different sites, they actually count at the shopping mall, at a mixed-use development, at a condo residence, right? Different sites all over the US, they do counts, and out of that they get a number for projecting demand that's applied to different types of uses. So for us, for the almost 60,000 square feet of office space, we assumed it would all be a vacant office space, back in the fall. We said it's all gonna be filled with tech workers in the future. They require 7 parking spaces versus 3.5 parking spaces. So we used that number for one calculation. Then we said, we're gonna assume all the vacant first floor commercial space in this inventory, right? We're gonna assume 95% occupancy, right? Which again is very aggressive. And we specifically set it up that way to be the most aggressive. Thank you, Stu.
Thank you.
Right, so we're gonna assume 95% occupancy. We're gonna do a discount in terms of saying 25% of the parking needed can be provided on street. And that's, right, based on the current on-street parking that we have today. So what we're looking at is today, we already provide 546 vehicle spaces. We have that surplus during our peak demand time. Then we said, we're gonna need an additional 449, right? So all the Imagine Clearwater stuff goes away. Here's the surplus that we have, right, from August of last year, that we can meet this 546 of the demand. And then they said, just to make the math easy, we'll divide it up over 10 years, 50 spaces per year. Now, obviously, if everything became filled tomorrow, we'd be in trouble, right?
Great, though.
I mean, that's the problem I want to have. That nothing would make me happier, right?
Boy, would we complain.
And I would welcome it. I would give
Nice
up
problem.
my parking spot in Station Square, okay? Does that make sense?
Yeah,
It handles it for me.
yeah. I
Did
gotta
you have
go
another
out.
question, Lena?
No, I have to absorb this.
Okay.
I have to, like, but I would like to continue this conversation once I wrap my mind around this, if you don't mind.
Absolutely.
Stay.
Yeah, of course.
Okay.
No, because I mean, we will be talking about parking always.
Yeah,
That is the nature of cities. I haven't had a year of my professional career that I haven't talked about parking.
you know, in New York, it's
Right.
1,500 a month, 2,000 a month for parking space. I mean,
Look, we used to talk about signs every meeting for years, so.
yeah.
I know.
Okay,
Which, by the way, we didn't even touch upon. The wayfinding signs have started,
I like them.
and I'm very excited. I can't wait to really delve into that. I'm excited about that.
okay, were you done with your,
I'm finished, but I'm happy to stay. If you want to talk more now, or we can talk more later.
I gotta go.
well, I think people are in a rush, so let's start with final comments and just see if there are any.
I think parking will turn out. I think it'll be okay. And if it's a little bit tight, it's a nice problem to have versus business downtown. I'd rather have a parking problem.
Okay, Lena?
I totally forgot. I'll try to make this quick. We know we have a certain amount of funds that we did not use, including the funds for the Harbor View Party. We have a great opportunity to give back as well as promote our community. As you know, Bahamas is obliterated. And so there is a wonderful woman who is a private pilot who has already been doing 6 flights to Bahama every day out of the Clearwater Airport. I was thinking that to allocate a huge block party where we can generate funds to help Bahamas and help fund her fuel. She's spending a lot of money. Maybe call it a Bahama Beach party. And we can promote downtown and help, another place that can be ruined. We understand the significance of a hurricane. I have not reached out to her specifically, but her peeps have reached out to me. And I would love to entertain that. Can we look at funding that? Because closing blocks is expensive when police officers, the fire marshals, the permitting, the parking. Is that something that we as a board would be interested in? If I can bring all the information next month and we can vote on it?
I
Guess we can look at
The
it.
board would definitely entertain any proposal for an event, and if it's to support a worthy cause, that's great. The event has to benefit downtown to be within our mandate of
Yes.
Anything
spending
brings people
DDB
downtown.
dollars.
Well, the event will benefit, but we will also use the event to generate funds for the charity. A friend of mine, a nurse that I used to work with at the Children's Hospital, is a nurse there, and she's been keeping in contact with me, and it's just total devastation, and they need our help. So,
Bring us a proposal.
Yeah.
okay.
I look forward to what we're doing. Just keep it quick.
Great, Dave?
Enough said, I think.
Yeah.
Great. I'd like to just, before we get, just very quickly, echo, yeah, we should do whatever we can to support the people that have been hurt by the hurricanes. My wife and I brought, several hundred items to a distribution center to be taken. They left on Saturday. So anything anybody can do is very welcome and very needed. Anyway, with that, I would like to, at 6:04 in the evening, call this meeting adjourned.